What problem does KAgent actually solve?
One of our clients was an insurance company, and their site was crashed. It was unavailable because there were too many people filing insurance claims for their home damages. So what we learned is, why can't we delegate some of the work we don't necessarily want to do to AI? Why can't we have AI as the first line of defense to help us troubleshooting?
Lin Sun is the head of open source at Solo.io, Cloud Native Computing Foundation's TOC member, and one of the voices shaping cloud-native innovation. From Istio to AI agents in Kubernetes, she shapes the future of open source through engineering, authorship, and influential global keynotes.
I always think AI workload is not that much different than traditional workloads. What I've seen is you don't get correctly the first time, and likely you don't get correctly the second time. But it's important to treat that as a gift and other people's feedback as a gift and continue involve.
So welcome to Automate or Die Tryin. I'm your host, Wil Ramos, and today I'm genuinely excited. We've got Lin Sun joining us. She's the VP of Open Source at Solo.io, maintainer on Istio, Gateway, and KAgent, sitting both on both the Istio and the Cloud Native Computing Foundation Technical Oversight Committees, co-sharing KubeConf for the next couple of years. And oh yeah, she's got over 200 patents to her name from her time as a Master Inventor at IBM. Lynn literally helped build the service mesh category, and now she's deep in the weeds on AI agents running in Kubernetes. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been
For
an honor to be on your show.
Sure, for folks tuning in, can you give us a snapshot? Like, what does your day-to-day look like right now, and what's the scale of open source work you're driving in?
Great question. So the start day, I woke up normally pretty early, like 7, and then I go for a big walk and I feed myself a very healthy breakfast. And then I start work around 9 a.m. Maybe most day-to-day work would be related to check out what's going on with the community, what are the features are we developing, what are the API changes we're breaking over user, attend or help run some of the community meeting, check out what's hot on social and what people are talking about on social, like what cool things people talk about. And also I run some internal meetings as well, drive some of the internal initiative that's maybe partially open source, partially not open source. A good portion of my job is also about doing conference speaking and also helping other people to be more successful in their conference submissions. Like today, I was helping one of our female engineers review her upcoming submissions to MCP Dev Summit. Just different things. I feel like sometimes I'm like running around doing a tons of different things for open source and for the company, but I kind of really enjoy that diversity perspective of doing different things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had like an incredible arc, right? Starting at IBM in the early 2000s, becoming a master inventor, then jumping into open source full time with Istio before it was even cool. So now you're steering some of the most important cloud native projects in the ecosystem. How did you first fall into this world?
That's a great question. Honestly, I feel like I'm super, super lucky. I feel like working on open source is it's like a treat, right? I think first started working on open source while I was at IBM. I started working on some of the Apache projects. I become a maintainer on two of the Apache projects that IBM was behind it. One is Apache Geronimo, the other one is Apache Aries. So that gives me like open source exposure, and I really enjoy it. I remember early days, I was a speaker for ApacheCon. That was one of my early speaking experience. I got to, meet with people in the community, travel to different place. It feels amazing just to be able to connect with people outside of the same employer you all get paid. That's a like very, very special feeling. And then in my later career at IBM, I got the opportunity to work on Istio. Well, the project was just formed. Istio was at the early days, it was just between IBM and Google employees. We will collaborate in a virtual room. We meet offsite before the Istio project become big. So that was a very, very special moment of my life to be there at the project very early and then see the project grow into the most popular service mesh, see the project getting a lot of criticism,
Mm.
being too complex, which we later on simplify Istio to run without sidecar, which I think turned around a lot of people's perspective on Istio. There's interesting politics around Istio, and we were able to have the community convince Google and take Istio project to CNCF. So that was a really interesting milestone of the project. And also recently, as Solo is investing big in open source, I help working with our engineers create a few most impactful open source projects such as the KAgent and Agent Gateway. It's a very, very exciting time for me as part of my career to continue working on open source.
Awesome. Now you've co-authored books on Istio and now one on AI agents and Kubernetes. So what made you think to write those? Did you see like there was some kind of gap missing that you were seeing, perhaps?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I was just lucky. I was actually just be in the right time at the right moment. When people ask me to write a book, I actually didn't think too much. I remember back when I was at IBM, one of the managers managing marketing for IBM, and she kind of reached out to me and one of the distinguished engineer also working on the Istio project to say, look, IBM has this great contract with O'Reilly. If we actually write a book for Istio, we don't have to pay O'Reilly anything because part of our contract, we already paid O'Reilly, big money. And this contract kind of expires in a couple of months. Can you work together and write the book? And to me, that was super exciting. I was working on the project for a long time and I was never offered an opportunity to write something. And now that I know the company was behind it, willing to, sponsor and part of arrange all the arrangements with O'Reilly, and I got to work with one of the best distinguished engineer at IBM. He was Dan Berg. So it really excites me, and the opportunity just come along without me asking for it. So I was super super lucky. And then my other books also comes pretty naturally. Honestly, I wasn't thinking too much, but because if I was the expert in the domain, people reach out to me. Do you want to write the book? Who do you want to work with? And I got to work with Christian Postar, who is like a fabulous author on some of my Istio book and also the AI agents in Kubernetes book. So I think I was just being very lucky at the right time, with the right co-author to work on the books.
Yeah, right time, right place, huh? That's great. So you have over 200 patents, right? So you clearly got a mind for invention. So how do you think about the difference between inventing inside a company like IBM versus building something in open source?
That's a good question. Honestly, none of my invention was related to my work. This might be very surprising to you. So IBM is, I believe IBM is like the biggest tech company that holds the most number of patents per year. I don't know if the recent year, but well, I was at IBM. IBM was like the number one company that holds the most number of patents per year. So as a company, IBM was really encourage people to submit inventions, and we have a invention review board. It's like a conference, CFP, where you write your invention ideas. You have to go through a invention review board, and the review board would challenging you and also give you a yes or no. And then the IBM would hire pay people to do prior search, and if they're all good, IBM would hire a lawyer, contract a lawyer to write the patent application for you. So the process is long, but IBM does a good job of promoting us as employee to, write up the invention and also give us pretty substantial rewards to. I always joke to my husband. All the money I made through my invention at IBM can actually fund our first house together, which is significant, right? Yeah, so it's kind of something fun I do. I remember a meeting with my coworkers at IBM on Friday for lunch. It's one of the way I networking and social with people and do the invention together, and then we get paid together whenever, the invention was fired
Mhm.
or it becomes a publication. So it's just a super, super cool experience. Honestly, that's the best thing. Now that I think about IBM, that's one of the best experience I had with IBM. But later on in my career, because I was so focused on open source, now at Solo, I actually didn't do that many inventions. Unfortunately, it was a small company. It doesn't have a patent process, so it's much harder to do invention. But with IBM, regardless what job you are in, you can always come up with something that's patent related. It's just super cool.
Right. So they support innovation, right? As part of their, yeah, that's great. It's great what company
You
does that.
put on your job promotion package too, because I remember, I was trying to reach to a senior technical staff member, in my last few years at IBM, and I was putting out the package for senior technical staff member, one of the criteria was patent application. I believe you have to have, like, 2 or 4 patents, which I'm overachieve on that, so it's super cool to see the company really focus on that, even on promotion packages.
That's great. That's great. So I want to deep dive a little bit into AI agents and Kubernetes. It's kind of sits a little bit close to my heart with some of the work that I do professionally. Um, so you are a maintainer of the on KAgent now, right? So it's an AI agent running natively in Kubernetes. This is actually bleeding edge. For people who haven't been tracking this closely, what problem does KAgent actually solve? And why do you need AI agents to live inside Kubernetes?
Great question. So we started KAgent internally first. I don't know, where do you live, by the way? I assume you live in US somewhere.
Yeah, California. I'm out of California. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe hurricane wasn't a big thing in California,
No.
but it was a big thing in the East Coast of the United States. So last year, Hurricane Helena was actually it was 2 years ago, not really in 2026. Hurricane Helena was hitting U.S. East Coast pretty bad, devastating in my state, and a lot of people were had their house damaged. And that particular weekend, the insurance company becomes super busy. In fact, one of our clients was an insurance company, and their site was crashed. It was unavailable because there were too many people filing insurance claims for their home damages. So our engineers had to jump on calls during the weekend and help the insurance company bring their site live back. It wasn't any issue related to any of our open source or enterprise project, but we had to kind of troubleshooting. It was related to Kubernetes, API gateway, network load balancer. So what we learned is, why can't we delegate some of the work we don't necessarily want to do to AI? Why can't we have AI as the first line of defense to help us troubleshooting or do some of the boring work we don't necessarily want to do? So that was the first thought when we started with KAgent. And because we are so involved in the cloud native community, so we were thinking, what if we bring the agentic AI experience to the Kubernetes and cloud native ecosystem through KAgent, through something that people already familiar with, like Kubernetes declarative YAML, customer resources, where people can build their agents through YAML without learning and actually writing code. And then by leveraging MCP server tools, large language model, they could potentially have a functional agent that can serve some basic work for them. So that was how KAgent was born, and also why we started with Kubernetes, because that was what we were using internally, and well, most of our customer were also running in Kubernetes. So we thought it would be cool to bring that agentic AI experiences simplified and declaratively as YAML to the Kubernetes and cloud native ecosystem.
So can you kind of walk me through what that actually looks like when an AI agent is orchestrated by Kubernetes? I mean, what's really happening under the hood?
Yeah, great question. So basically, when you deploy AI, a KAgent, you would be deployed a declarative YAML, which has a KAgent resource. And once you deploy that YAML into a Kubernetes cluster, the KAgent controller would be watching out to this customer resource and spin out corresponding like service account, deployment services for that particular agent. And for that particular agent, it needs somebody needs to run it, right? So we under the cover, we're still using agent runtime. I believe right now we use by default we use Google's ADK Agent Development Kit as the runtime, but you could optionally plug in other agent development kit as runtime. Like we support some of the agent core, we support Crew AI. So optionally you could plug in other agent runtime. So in a nutshell, we bring this Kubernetes experience to our user, but under the cover, it would still using a particular agent runtime, and you could still configure your agent declaratively to say, hey, this is my agent instructions, and this is the language model I want to use, and these are the tools, the MCP tools I want the agent to use. So you can all define that declaratively. It's kind of think about it as a higher abstraction for your agent, specifically for Kubernetes.
Okay. Now you spent, years thinking about the service mesh, traffic management, security at the network layer. Now you're thinking about AI workloads. What's different about securing and managing AI agents compared to traditional microservices?
Yeah, very, very interesting question. I always think AI workload is not that much different than traditional workloads, where we should be able to reuse a lot of concept from traditional workloads. So, for instance, if I'm running my AI agent, I need identity, which traditional workload also needs, right? If I'm running my AI agent, I need secure communication, mutual TLS ideally with cryptographic identity from my agent to the other agent, or from my agent to my MCP server, from my agent potentially at least one-way TLS to the large language model. So this is not much different than the traditional workload. However, I do think some of the stuff is different. For instance, MCP right now is stateful protocol, right? I know the MCP community is working on making MCP not stateful, but right now the context is important for agent and MCP, right? So people talking about that context layer of security, which is the actual layer on top of layer 7, which what we normally talk about for traditional workload. You talk about security at layer 4, and then you also talk about security at layer 7, where when you have defense in-depth strategy with AI agents and MCP. Now that we have to think through, because the context matters, the session matters more, so we have to think through the layer 8 security and have that in mind, right? So for instance, you could config your agents maybe have get access to one of the tools as part of provided by your MCP server, but not having any other access to any of the other tools. So that was one of the example. You can get to the tool level, which wasn't a case with traditional workloads, right? It's more on HTTP paths, how you configure read, write access with MCP server. It would be, you know, access to your tools, to your prompts. So it will be a lot more different because the context changes for AI agents and MCP. So I feel like we can do more in that case.
Yeah, since we're in bringing up MCP, right? For technical leaders that are trying to understand how their AI systems will communicate and share context, what should they actually understand about MCP? And where do you see it going?
That's a great question. You know, the every day, I think I'm part of the MCP Discord for contributors and users. Every day, I see so many MCP server created and put in the registry. It's an ecosystem that's been growing faster than anything else I've ever witnessed. I have to be honest with you, the MCP Discord, like the tremendous momentum behind not only for contributor but for the users and the ecosystem is something I've never witnessed myself. So I think people willing to put out their MCP servers out there, sharing with other people, collaborate with other people to make the protocol better. It's something, I've never seen the industry come together so fast, together on this. People see the urgency. So I see a bright future with MCP, but I do think a lot of people struggle with, I think people understand day zero of MCP, right? I got to my MCP server running locally. I can connect to my remote MCP server. That's very well understood. A lot of people are using MCP with STDIO. What's tricky with MCP, I think it's taking to production, right? Having multi-tenancy, having security and governance that your security team or your governance team will feel comfortable and deploy repetitively, have a good recovery story around it. I think the day two operation, I would say MCP is what people still struggle with because there's so many choices out there, and a lot of them are also fast evolving as well.
Now, do you see MCP becoming like the HTTP of AI agents, the way it's growing?
I think it certainly is going that way, right? For agents to think out the tools, I think the MCP server is going to that direction. But I do think there will be other protocols, maybe more complementary to MCP. Say, for instance, there are agent-to-agent protocol, which you probably already heard of.
Mhm.
Anthropic also just, I believe, a week ago, they announced agent skills in, I think, in October last year, and they just also donated that as an open standard of agent skills as well, right? So that also complements very well with MCP. So I would say I wouldn't say MCP is the only one. I can see the surrounding ecosystem also evolve as well.
Now, you've shipped a lot of open source, right? What is the hardest technical decision that you've had to make on KAgent or KGateway so far? Something where reasonable engineers disagreed.
I think the hardest decision was to open source or not to open source a lot of times, honestly. It's a really hard balance. If you are in the industry, you probably see some good open source project actually become deprecated or sunset, right? For instance, I think somebody was just posting on LinkedIn, Kubernetes dashboard is going to be archived. For instance, Ingress Nginx, everybody was talking about it at KubeCon in Atlanta is going to be archived, right, in March this year. So the biggest challenging of open source, I think it's how do you actually finding people who actually got paid to maintain the open source projects, right?
Mm.
So to me, as a company who is very putting a lot of investment in open source, is how do you actually sustain that payroll, right? You want the open source projects to be successful. You also want your enterprise to be successful, at least growing, right? To be able to pay some of the paychecks for the open source investment you have. I just don't believe an open source project, maybe a hobby project, can be maintained by somebody during the weekend or nights, but I just don't believe a big project, an infrastructure project like Istio or KGateway can be maintained as somebody's hobby, right? So at the end of the day, it needs to be adopted and it needs to some people, I'm not saying everybody, but some people needs to be willing to pay for it, whether it's paying for support or whether it's paying for the enterprise offering. So to me, I feel like that's the hardest decision. It's not a technical decision, but it's such an important business decision to make the open source project sustainable and maintainable.
Now, if the CTO came to you tomorrow and said, we're deploying AI agents in production next quarter, what's the first question you'd ask them?
I guess I would ask them, what scale and what are the open standards and protocols are you looking at? How are you looking at the security and the governance in this picture? Yeah. And what are your return of investment? How you envision this is going?
Yeah. And what do you think most teams get wrong early?
I think most people get wrong uh, by having the agents and MCP server, maybe it's in correctly in the prototype, got it up running, able to show demo, but having a really hard time to put it in production because what works locally in your dev environment is going to be drastically different as you move into production environment to be able to support more scale, more have more tighter security requirements. I remember there was a study by MIT last year. They said 95 plus people got it wrong with AI and agents because they were having trouble to move it beyond dev test to production because they would just get it fast running, but not thinking about like the security and productionist operation requirements for production.
Great, great. So we're coming up on time, but I wanted to make sure we capture a few things. You've seen multiple ways of infrastructure innovation, containers, Kubernetes, service mesh, and now AI. What's one principle or lesson that's held across all of them? Like something you'd tell a leader just stepping into this space.
That's a great question. In fact, I'm actually thinking about this today. I would say treat failure as a gift. What I've seen noticeably is you don't get correctly the first time, and likely you don't get correctly the second time.
Yeah.
But it's important to treat that as a gift and other people's feedback as a gift and continue involve. And I've personally witnessed that with the Istio project as we are part of it. Like people complain about sidecar being too complex. And with enough complaining, we finally think out a solution to get rid of sidecar, right? And a lot of people loved that. So if everybody can have this thoughts of treating, feedback and rejection as gift, I think our ecosystem would be in a much good place.
Absolutely. I've always said success comes out of failure, right? So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Um, so what are you the most excited about building or exploring over the next year?
That's a great question. Honestly, there's just so much to learn in this space. I want to, build more MCP servers myself. I'm actually play with Zoom myself, and I kind of want to kind of build this some agents and MCP server myself, and leverage that as part of my learning and figure out how to move the needle and what's the best practice to having MCP and agents in production myself too. And, just to stay on top of those things. And I'm also excited about the work we're doing in the registry because I do believe everybody going to need a registry to host their MCP server and the agents. So that's super exciting. And, yeah, I guess to me, what's really hard is I don't know about you, I always failed behind. So to me, I think the hardest thing is actually stay on top of things and, don't let yourself behind.
Absolutely. Now, where can people follow your work, catch your talks, or contribute to the projects you're driving?
Yeah, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. So people can find me if they search Lin Sun solo.io. I'm also in the Istio community, which you can reach out to me at istio.io. I join the weekly developer meeting every week and the technical oversight committee meeting. I'm also frequently participate on KAgent community meeting, KAgent, and also Agent Gateway community meeting. Yeah, I'm definitely around.
Great. Lynn, this was fantastic. You've been at the center of so many technologies that run into modern infrastructure, and it's clear that you're just getting started on the AI agent side. Thanks for making the time. Um, Thanks for
Thank you
joining
so much
us.
for having
Yeah,
me.
absolutely. Thank you for joining us on Automate or Die Tryin, where the future is being built in real time. If this conversation made you think differently about AI agents, service mesh, or what's coming next in the cloud native, share it with someone who builds. Subscribe wherever you listen. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.